Hello, this is John from GEDMathLessons.com. It's my free GED Math course online. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But in this particular video, we're going to go ahead and focus on the concept of perimeter. Okay, definitely something that you want to know in your preparation for the GED. Now, as with a lot of things in math, the concepts are pretty easy to understand, but the application of them can get can start off easy, and then you can certainly make it more complex. But perimeter is not that difficult to understand. And I got two figures here. We'll take a look at both, and then I'll leave you with some follow-on suggestions before the video ends. Okay, so perimeter is effectively just the distance around something. So let's suppose I have this square. Let's say this is a soccer field or a football field, or I wanted to measure all around, okay, the entire length of the field. So if this is a factor rectangle, let's say this is 100, let's say this is, let's say 30, the perimeter would be this distance. I'm going to draw this distance plus this distance plus this distance plus this distance. It's the total distance around an object. Just kind of think of it as if you were walking around this thing and you wanted to measure how much you traveled if you were going to do a complete lap around something. Okay, that is perimeter. So the perimeter of this rectangle here would be 100 plus 30, right? So let me kind of just erase this here so we can kind of keep track of this. So it's 100 plus 30, but we're going to go another 100 this way, right? Plus, we're going to finish this out by going another 30 this way. All right, so when you do this calculations, we get 100 and 100, that's 200. And then I get 30 and 30, that's 60. So this is 260. Now, if this was feet, for example, units of measure would also be in feet. So that's just the basic concept of perimeter. But oftentimes, it's easy to understand. But if you don't know what the word means, okay, if the problem says, hey, find the perimeter of something, and you confuse it with area, then that's where a lot of students get themselves in trouble. So it's important that you understand the terminology of these things. Now, that's a real basic perimeter problem, but in all likelihood, you might very well see something like this problem here. So let me just kind of draw in some figures, some numbers here, and I'm just going to make some things up. And I'll give you a chance to actually do a little pop quiz question here. All right, so here is a figure, and if I asked you what the perimeter of this figure was, what would it be? So you might want to pause the video and see if you can figure it out for yourself. Okay, again, perimeter is just the distance around, so you can start anywhere. So let's suppose I started walking here, I went 8, then I went 3, then I went 10, then I went another 8, then I went 6, and then I went, well, this distance here, actually, I need to put a distance in here for that, 3, sorry about that, and then 4. Now, if you answered, you took a little quiz without that number there, and you said, well, I can't calculate the perimeter because I don't have a value there, that would be a good response, okay? So, anyways, but getting back to the idea of perimeter, it's just the distance around. It doesn't have to be that complicated. So we would just add this up. 8. I like to, kind of keep it in order, right? Just kind of go this way. A plus 3 plus 10 plus another 8 plus 6 plus 3 plus 4. Okay, so we do all this math, we'll get the perimeter. So let's go ahead and do it anyways. So 8 and 8, that's 16. 10 and 3, that's 13. And then right here, I got 6 and 4, that's 10. And another 3, that's 13, right? So I'm just kind of doing some shortcut math here. That's 26 and 16. Let's do it over here, 16 and 26, it's 12. So if I did this right, this should be 42. Now, again, if this was in feet, this would be 42 feet. Now, another thing that you want to be careful with when it comes to perimeter calculations is exactly what I'm showing you here. You're doing a lot of calculations, so it's very easy to make a mistake even though you know what you're doing, you can make an arithmetic mistake. So when you're doing this on your calculator, or if you're doing it writing things out, double check that you have all your numbers there that you're actually calculating. Perimeter. So this is a basic idea of perimeter. Now, let me kind of show you some other type of problems, kind of sketch them out the best I can. You might have something like this. Oh, let's say, just kind of drawing something kind of crazy here. So they might indicate in the figure that this is like a rectangle, if you will. All right, kind of follow me what I'm saying here. So this would be, let's say 10, and then this would be 2, and let's say this would be 3, right? And then you essentially have to figure out, you'd have to kind of determine what these lengths are. They're not going to give them to you. But you'll have to kind of work with this side. If they said this is like a rectangle, for example, okay, if these are right angles, and to basically fill in the blanks. So you're going to have some knowledge of triangles and look at the figure, because very often they, in a perimeter problem, they won't give you every single length. They're not going to spell it out. You're going to have to study the figure a little bit and use the relationships, what's going on, to get these different areas. So if this is 10 here, and this is 2 and 3, and I want the perimeter, and these are kind of right angles, okay, this down here would have to be what? This is 5, so somehow these two figures down here would also have to end up being 5, right? I got 3 and 2, so this plus this would also have to be 5 for a total length of 10, because this is 10 down here. All right, so I hope that kind of makes sense to you, in a sense that in the perimeter figure, it's not going. They're not going to. Part of the problems that they're testing is your ability to kind of reason through and get those missing values. But again, not difficult. Perimeter, pretty easy, but it's also easy to mess up, right? And it's also easy to be intimidated by if you don't know what the word means. And if you look at a figure and like, well, the numbers aren't there. Well, you just have to study it a little bit more and add in the missing values, and you'll be okay. All right, so kind of short and quick video. I don't think we need to go any further on that.
All right. That's just a couple of videos. What I want to do now is kind of give you a review, talk about everything we've done so far with decimals. Right, so sort of a decimals review. Seems like we've been on decimals for a very long time, but it's really not been that long. The very first thing we learned about was place value. Okay, where the numbers are in relationship to the decimal point. This is the ones, this is the tens, this is the hundreds, this is the thousands, then this is the tenths, and this is the hundredths, and this is the thousandths. And we had a place value chart. You can go into Blackboard, go back to whatever day we covered that, and you can pull that place value chart up. If I can remember, I'll put that place value chart back in today's folder. But I told you needed to learn that chart. You've got to learn the place values, because you're not going to have that chart in front of you all the time, but they're going to use these words on the GED. You've got to know what those words are. Remember that everything after the decimal point ends in THS. All of them end in TH or THS. Anything after the decimal point. Then the next thing we did was rounding. Okay, that was the second thing that we did. And in rounding, the first thing you have to do is find the target place value, and then we used the phrase look next door. Look at the number next to it to the right. And then if 5 or more, raise the score. That was the phrase that we used. If the number to the right is 5 or more, then your target number goes up by 1. 4 or less, let it rest, was the phrase that we used. So if we are, let's say we're taking the number 235.763 and we're told to round to nearest hundredth, then the steps, the first thing we do is we find the target. If we're doing hundredth, that is this decimal place. Then the next step is to look next door. 5 or more, raise the score. The number next door is a 3, so we do not bump up the 6. It stays as a 6, but everything after the decimal place is dropped. Let's say that we're taking that same number, 235.763, and we're told to round to nearest tens. Round to the nearest tens, or to the nearest 10. It may just say round to the nearest 10. So our target place value is the tens place, not after the decimal point, because this does not end in THS, it ends in S. So it's before the decimal point. Then we look next door, 5 or more, raise the score. So that means we're going to take this 3 and bump it up. That's going to become a 4. We have to leave the numbers that are in front of it, but everything else gets filled with a 0. And if there are any decimals, those get completely dropped. We cannot put any decimal points after that, because then you would be, looks like you're rounding to that decimal place. And that's not what we're doing. All right, so that was the second thing that we did. Then the third thing that we did was we looked at comparing. We were comparing fractions and decimals. All right, comparing decimals is fairly easy. If I have 46.9 and 46.7, and we want to know which one's bigger, which one's smaller, then we know that with our decimal places, since 46 is our whole number part and it's the same in both, then we go to the decimal places, and since this is a 7 and this is a 9, this is larger. when we were doing fractions, if I have 3/4 and 2/5, and I want to know which one is larger, we did the butterfly method where we take these two numbers and multiply them together and get 15. And then we take these two numbers and multiply them together and get 8. And so since 15 is bigger than 8, then 3/4 is bigger than 2/5. So that's why you have to do this in this order: 5 times 3, 4 times 2, and then whichever number is bigger, that fraction is the biggest number. Okay? Then we did ordering, where we were ordering fractions and decimals. And we had to be careful of going from smallest to largest, or if they wanted largest down to smallest. Okay? And so we had to use butterfly method when we were doing fractions. And if you'll remember, we had to talk about and look at, were there any whole number parts to any of those fractions? With the decimals, we put the numbers, lined up the decimal points. So when you're doing decimals, we make that grid and line up the decimal points. And then go through the grid and look to see which thing is largest, which thing is smallest, depending on what order you were going. Okay? Really not anything I can write about the fractions. It's just a lot of that's looking at what to do, looking at what you've got. I would say that now, since we have covered converting to decimals, I would use that if you were ordering any fractions. So I will write convert fractions to decimals. But then make sure you go back and write your answers as fractions. So change the fractions to decimals, then order them and put your answers back as fractions. Then we covered converting. Converting fractions into decimals or decimals into fractions. When we were converting fractions into decimals, if I have 3/5, you take the number on the bottom and you divide it into the number on the top, or if you have a calculator, you punch in your calculator 3 divided by 5. Okay, and in this case it's 0.8, I believe. Let me double check. Okay, 0.6. That was close. All right, and then converting decimals into fractions, if we have 0.36, we look at how many decimal places there are. There are 2. That means that's how many zeros we have to have in front of our 1. So since there are 2 decimal places, we need 2 zeros. So we're putting the number over 100, and then we just write the number that's after the decimal place, and then we reduce if we need to reduce. And in this case, we would need to divide the top and bottom by 4. 4 goes into 36, 9, 4 goes into 125 times. Okay. And then, of course, we had to be careful if we had mixed numbers. So let me write that. I'm assuming that on the GED, more than likely. If you don't, I would imagine the numbers will be small. They would not be huge, giant numbers that you couldn't easily do the division or the reducing or whatever. This would be easy to do because you would be doing 5 into 30, and that goes 6 times. So they would not be, they're not going to give you convert 397 over 6,395. They're not going to give you problems like that on the non-calculator part. The numbers, the ones that they give you on the non-calculator part, the numbers are easy to work with. They're checking to see if you know the concept and know what to do. Okay, one with mixed numbers, all right. And so this is continuing number 5. So if we have, for example, if I have 2 and 3/11ths, okay, then I know that my decimal number is going to be 2 point. This whole number part means that's the part in front of the decimal. Then we do the fraction part and we divide 11 into 3, or we punch in our calculator 3 divided by 11, and we get 0.2727272727, etc. So I would have that. If I had 4.03 36, I'll do that. Then this means that we're going to have 4 and a fraction. Okay, so we're going to have 4 as our whole number part, and then we're going to have a fractional part. Here I have 3 decimal places, so my answer has to have 3 zeros. And I used 36 again, but this is divisible by 4, and so is that divisible by 4. And so you would get 4 and 9, 250, 9 over 250. Yes. If it's a repeating decimal and you don't show that it's a repeating decimal, then you have to round. And so if this is 2.272727, then depending on what you're going to round it to, the instructions in the problem may tell you to round it to a certain decimal point. Okay. So if it doesn't tell you to round, then you ought to put the bar over the repeating part. If it does tell you to round, then round to whatever it tells you in the problem to round to. All right, then the next thing we did was we were looking at angles and perimeter. And we talked about complementary angles. We talked about supplementary angles. We talked about vertical angles. We talked about adjacent angles. and we talked about perimeter. And we did that particular lesson on the geometry stuff. And so the word complementary means two angles that add to 90 degrees. So if they give you one, or they ask for the complement of what's the complementary angle for 60 degrees, you take 90 minus 60. Then for supplementary angles, those were two angles that add to 180 degrees. Vertical angles were across from each other. Okay, like this. Those two angles are vertical angles. And then finally, adjacent angles. Those are angles that are next to each other. So this angle and that angle are adjacent. And we looked at, if we know one of the angles and we know the big angle, then we take the little angle and subtract it from the big angle to get the missing angle. And the last thing we did here was perimeter, and that is the distance around a geometric shape. And so you simply just add the sides. That's all there is to perimeter, adding up the sides. And then the last thing that we did was some statistics with mean, median, mode, and range. Mean is the average, and you add the numbers and divide by the number of numbers. That sounds kind of confusing, but you take the values in the data set and you divide it by the number of items in the data set. For median, this was the middle. And remember, if there were two in the middle, find the average or the mean. You add the two up that are in the middle, divide by 2. Mode means most, whatever data value appears the most. If there's only one of each, then there is no mode. But there can be multiple modes. There could be 3 of a particular number, and that might occur 3 or 4 times. That's okay. And then finally, range. Range is the highest minus smallest. Okay. So from highest minus the smallest gives us the range. The other note we need to make about the middle is you have to put these in order. And we typically go from smallest up to largest. Okay, so for median, put them in order, find the middle. Range, take the highest value, subtract the smallest value. Okay, so that's the stuff that we've covered. So today you're going to be doing exercises that are a review of everything. So the first one you're going to do this sheet. All right, so I'm going to give you the first one and give you time to work on it. This will also be a good time to take a break. There is something I want to point out on it, so I'm going to show you. That's almost the only way you can do it, is to put them in order if you're going to find the middle. So I'm going to turn that off and let me show you, because I want to show you something about the assignment. So don't jump in there yet. I mean, the classwork. So the first one we're going to do says Introduction to Decimals. And if we go down, I have marked in yellow the parts I want you to work. So I've marked them in yellow, the parts that I want you to work. Okay, so this is the first sheet, and the problems really start right there. So you're going to have a mix of the first few things that we did, place value, rounding, comparing, and ordering are going to be on this sheet. Okay, so I have that it is 10:35. I think you can finish this and take a break by 11. So I'm going to put here in chat that you need to finish this sheet and take a break and be back at 11, not 11:01, not 11:02, 11 o'clock. So I'm going to put take a break, finish classwork, be back by 11 o'clock. Do not log off. If you log off, then Blackboard stops counting your time. And so you should not be logging off. You should be staying on so that Blackboard is counting your time and you're not losing time. All right. And so let me hit enter. Anybody have any questions before I take a break? All right, then I'm taking a break and I will be back at 11, or I'll be back before 11. It'll probably be about 5 minutes before 11. I'll come back. But last chance, any questions? Okay, I'm taking a break. All right, let me know if you're still working. All right, I'm going to show you the answers. And so you did not do this top part. Here's where you started, where you put in the greater than, less than. Then up here, 7 through 10, they were asking you basically to name each of the decimal, each place value. And then I don't have it marked, but these were the last two problems, the multiple choice questions. Any questions? All right, then no questions. This is now the second thing that I want you to work on. And it looks like this. And the problems actually start, there's some review stuff there, but there's not that many problems. I believe it's only on, well, number 1 and 2, they want you to identify what those polygons are. And then at the bottom down here are the problems that you work. Well, you just left. Okay, so basically the 2 on the top where you identify what those are, and the 3 down here on the bottom where you find the perimeter. You should be able to finish these in about 10 minutes or less. Yes, there are only 3 problems on the bottom of the page. All right, so let me know when you finish these. Should not be taking you this long. We're just finding the perimeter. All right. Let's get the answers. Okay, I'm not sure. I didn't give you page 336, so ignore that part. It's the top. You should have gotten a square and a triangle. And then these are the answers to the 3 perimeter problems. All right, any questions about those? 100 yards, 40 centimeters, 46 meters. All right, we've got one more for you to work on. This one's a little longer, and I need to explain something on it. This is on mean, median, and mode. And you've got a practice question, you've got some example information up here, and then here are your questions. When you get down here to question 10, 11, 12, it's asking for the interquartile range. We haven't covered that, so I don't expect you to do these. If it were me, these are on the GED, but we just haven't gotten to this yet. If it were me, I would go back up here and look at the explanation. Basically, what you do is you find the median, and then so that gives you half the numbers on one side, half the numbers on the other side. You take the numbers on the left and you find the median of those numbers. You take the numbers on the right and you find the median of those numbers, and then you take the two medians and subtract. That's the inner quartile range. If it were me, I would go back later and look at these. You don't need to do it now, but I would go back and see if you can get the answer to these. I'll give you the answers, but you ought to go back and play with it and see if you can come up with the answer yourself, because you probably will get, there are statistics questions on the GED, and this is one of the ones they love to ask this question. So it's not really hard. Find the median, take the numbers on the left, find the median of those numbers, take the numbers on the right, find the median of those numbers, and then subtract the medians of the two sides. So the rest of these, all of these are pretty straightforward data sets. Nothing is too extreme. Some of these you can answer very quickly because they are asking for a median or mode or range. So I've got 10:19. I think you should be able to finish these by 10:30. I mean 11:30. All right, let me know if you're finished. All right, let me know if you are still working on this. If you're still working. Is there anybody still working? All right. Sure. All right, let me pull up the answers for you. All right, so here are the answers. And I was looking on the last ones, 10, 11, 12. 10 is right, 11 is wrong. That's the wrong answer. I didn't finish it. All right, are there any questions for 1 through 9? Those were fairly easy data sets. All right, there was a question about the value of a number in a decimal place. So I want to go over that. So I'm going to switch to my camera. because there will be, I think there's 1 or 2 or 3 of these on the assignment. I want to make sure you understand how to do this. Well, okay. Let's say I have a number 235,962.3496. All right, let's say we have that number, and let's say it asks us what is the value of this 9. Okay, that 9 is in the hundreds place, so the value of that digit in this number is 900. If they want to know what is the value of this 2, that 2 is in the hundred thousands place, so it is 200,000. This number, they want to know what is the value of that 3. That 3 is in the tenths place, which means that it's 3 over 10 or 0.3. The value of this 4, that is in the hundredths place. Its value is 4 over, that's 2 decimal places, 4 over 100 or 0.04. So basically, if they ask for the value, you're going to take that number, chop off everything in front of it, except on the decimal places, but over here, chop off everything in front of it, and it's the value or the number of zeros after, or you fill in zeros after that place. So for example, the value of that 5 is 5, and then we have these 3 places that need to be filled with a 0. This is 30,000. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros that have to be filled in after the digit. On these, it's the other way around. Zeros have to go in front. So if we want the value of this 9 as a fraction, it's 9 over 1,000, 3 decimal places. But when I write the 9, I have to fill these 2 places with zeros. Okay, so does that kind of help clear that up? Yeah, usually once it gets explained to you and some examples shown, that's what most people do. Oh gosh, I get that. I understand that. Okay. All right. Today is reading day. So we're going to start got a couple of videos. Today we're going to be looking at word choice. So you want to get out your notebook. Okay, let me flip it.
Grammarly. For those of you that don't know, Grammarly is a digital writing assistant.
Hello, this is John from GEDMathLessons.com. That's my free GED Math course online.
How did I get that wrong? All right, I'm gonna have to do this one this way. Okay.
Now that's interesting. We're getting a sneak peek at some of the text that Liz is sending to her mom asking for money. Did you notice how Liz decided to change some of her wording? She changed mom to mommy. Oh, that's sweet. I'd probably do the same thing. And now she's saying that she could use some money instead of saying that she needs some money. Did you also notice that now she's saying that she rarely goes out instead of saying she never goes out? What Liz is doing is paying attention to her word choice and how words can change the tone of what's being conveyed. She is looking for words that might soften her request and get her message across as clearly as possible. All right, I did my homework and I practiced my dance. Nice. Whoa, she's changing it again. Okay, I wonder what she's gonna do this time. Oh, I see. From did to tackled, and from practiced to perfected. Nice. That is the power of word choice. Hey, I think I'm getting ready to fork over some money to her. Liz is clearly choosing words that have a better chance of getting what she wants. Pony up? Okay, I think she's about to, yep, there you go, deleted. Okay, do you see all the changes that she made to her wording here? There's a lot. Pony up some dough versus I only need about $20. That's a pretty big difference. When you think about it, both of those phrases kind of mean the same thing, but because of the word choice, the way those messages come across is so much different. Oh, okay, what's she gonna say now? Oh, that's sweet. I'm glad she didn't say something like, sincerely yours, Liz. Ooh, another text message. This one's to her friend Bethany. Let's see what Liz says. Hey Beth, just finished up my chores. Now waiting to get some money from my mom so we can go see the movie. I'll let you know soon, later. Wow, already a huge difference in rhetoric compared to the text that she just sent her mom. What differences do you notice? For me, the first thing that jumped out was that she said hey instead of hi. It means the same thing, but it's a lot more casual. What about the way that she references doing her homework and practicing dance? What other kinds of differences in word choice and inferences can you make? Just in looking at these simple examples between the text that Liz is sending her mom and comparing them to the text that she sends her friend Bethany, we could see that words clearly matter. Authors know this too. And so do journalists. And people who write ads. And speechwriters know it too. They choose their words based on the results they want. They think about what they want their reader to feel or think about or picture in their minds. And you can do it too when you're writing a simple text message or even when you're writing an original story. You will learn so much more about the power of word choice through your assigned reading and online practice sets. Well, it's about time for me to leave now. Or should I say, zoom off? Maybe I'll mosey on out. Or slink away. Oh, how about swagger down the street?
All right. So that talked really good about choosing your words. Now let's see if it's going to work over here this time for the next one. Yeah. Okay.
Suppose it's time, if we have to talk about tone. You see, if I were feeling snide or dismissive or sarcastic, I'd use a lot of disdainful language to talk about how little I value this topic, which is a piddling trifle, a bagatelle, a trivial little nothing. Far more likely, though, considering my love of language, is the notion that I'd be enthusiastic and encouraging. I would say understanding tone unlocks a treasure house of understanding. It is a feast of knowledge. Tone communicates how an author feels about the topic they're writing about. Now, this can come across in a number of different ways. It can reflect their enthusiasm or skepticism. It can also communicate formality or informality. An academic paper or a speech before the UN, for example, are very different things from a toast at a wedding or a thank you card for a birthday gift. And this kind of difference in tone is something that sociologists and linguists call register. Social conventions and customs call for different registers in different circumstances. Just as it would be inappropriate in most situations to wear a tuxedo at the beach, so too would it be incongruous to use extremely formal language in an informal setting. Dear honored sir, it was the privilege of my very life to have you attend my 14th birthday party. I am grateful beyond words for your most generous gift, a check for 36 American dollars. Your humble and obedient servant, David. In fact, using extremely formal language and high-minded gratitude for something as relatively small as a birthday gift might even come across as sarcastic or insulting. But this is sort of an extreme example. Let's pull back and discuss how an understanding of tone can aid you in making sense of informational texts. One great way to do that is to analyze word choice. We can look at a writer's language and determine their attitude towards the subject based on the words they've chosen to describe it. Oceans of ink have been spilled over comparisons between a Chicago-style hot dog and a New York-style hot dog. The first with its garden's worth of toppings, but a holier-than-thou prohibition of ketchup. The latter with its sauerkraut, mustard, and dubious dirty water cooking style. But scant attention, a droplet of ink before the ocean, has been paid to the half-smoke, the unsung but mighty regional sausage of Washington, D.C. Now, how does the author think about the subject? Well, we know that they think that not enough writing has been done about DC's regional sausage, the half-smoke, but how do they feel about it? How do the words they use express their feelings? Let's break it down bit by bit. So, right out of the gate, we have oceans of ink. This is a deliberate piece of overstatement. There are no literal oceans made of ink, but it's being set up in opposition to the droplet of ink used to describe half-smokes later in the paragraph. Half-smokes are described as unsung but mighty, which suggests that they haven't been given their due. There hasn't been enough praise for half-smokes. And that therefore the amount of attention given to Chicago and New York hot dogs is unfair or even disproportionate. I think we can also determine from word choice that the author thinks a Chicago hot dog is a little ridiculous and that a New York hot dog is a little gross. How do we know this? Chicagoans generally don't like ketchup on their hot dogs, and the way the author phrases this is by saying that they have a holier-than-thou prohibition on ketchup, which is to say they get all haughty and upset about it, which is weird because it's ketchup. Listen, I'm a Chicagoan by birth. I used to feel this way, and I'm not even sure why. Similarly, the word dubious in the description of the New York hot dog, meaning doubtful, suggests that the dirty water cooking method is kinda nasty sounding. Why would the author do this? Is it to say these are terrible hot dogs and nobody should eat them? No, I don't think so. The author is trying to make room for the half smoke in the national sausage conversation. And to do that, they're first trying to dismantle the importance of New York and Chicago style by making fun of them. These are tactical choices, not to be confused with authorial voice, which is a different concept entirely. An author's voice is their style. It's much more consistent across topics, whereas a tone is specific to a topic. So I might have an authorial voice that uses a lot of goofy wordplay, but I use a sympathetic tone to talk about bears and a hostile tone to talk about, I don't know, whales. Yeah, boo whales. I said it. I do not actually hate whales. I love whales. But my point is this. Use your knowledge of words, of the connotation and implications of the language that an author might use to unlock your understanding of their tone. Because if you can do that, my friend, you can learn anything. David out.
All right, and I've got one more.
A diaper this leak-free sets them free. Only Pampers Cruisers 360 have a...
Need to master GED RLA figurative language? Then you're in the right place. Hi, this is Parker from Desk Prep Champions, teaching you how to pass the GED fast. And you can get started by clicking subscribe down below. In this video, we're going to have a special guest appearance, and the special guest is going to help us with the lesson, so stay tuned for that. So there are 3 types of figurative language that you need to understand for the GED test. The first type is the metaphor. You'll also need to understand similes, and you also must know about personification. And we're going to break these down right now. So, what's the difference between a metaphor and a simile? Well, they both are used for comparisons. A simile compares 2 things using like or as. On the other hand, a metaphor compares 2 things without using like or as. So note the word simile and how it has an L in it. So remember, simile, like or as. Whereas in a metaphor, we can make a comparison, but we don't use like or as. So again, in a simile, you compare 2 things using like or as, and a metaphor compares 2 things without using like or as. So here's an example of a simile, and this is a famous quote from a movie. Life is like a box of chocolates. So in this case, we're comparing life to a box of chocolates. Or I really should say Forrest Gump is comparing life to a box of chocolates. And in this comparison, we're using the word like. So again, a simile is a comparison that uses like or as. So we could also change the quote up a little bit, and we could say life is a box of chocolates. So that would be a metaphor. So again, in the metaphor example, we're comparing life again to a box of chocolates, but we're not using like or as. So hopefully you can see the difference between a simile and a metaphor. So let's talk about personification. So in the word personification, hopefully you can see the word person. All right, so I want you to remember that whenever you see the word personification, because personification means giving human characteristics to something that's non-human. Okay, you're personifying something, or in other words, you're personifying it. So the correct way to pronounce it is not personifying, it's personifying. But I'm emphasizing that because I want to emphasize the word person. So remember, in personification, you're giving human characteristics to something that's non-human. Okay? And here's an example of personification. The storm knocked on the door. So a storm can't literally knock on your door. So rather than saying the storm knocked on your door and meaning it literally, this is figurative, right? This is figuratively speaking, which is why this is a type of figurative language. So on a really windy night, it might almost sound like the storm is knocking on your door because it's so windy, right? But a storm can't literally knock on your door, and that's why this is giving human characteristics to a storm when the storm is something that's non-human. So that's why this is an example of personification. So now we're going to look at some examples, and our special guest is going to come into play here. And I want you to decide in each example, is it an example of a simile, a metaphor, or a personification? Okay, so consider the sentence here. The couch cried out for Tommy to scratch it. So pause the video if you'd like to. Think about it. Is this an example of a simile, a metaphor, or personification? Okay, so this is an example of personification. Well, when we say the couch cried out for Tommy to scratch it, we're not literally talking about a couch, about the couch crying out, because a couch is not a real person. A person could cry out, but a couch couldn't. So we're giving human characteristics to something that's non-human. This is an example of personification. So the next example, Tommy slept in bed like a baby. Is this a metaphor, a simile, or is this personification? So pause the video now if you'd like to and think about it, and then we'll go over it. Okay, this is an example of a simile. And the reason is because we're drawing a comparison here using the word like. So remember, a simile, comparison using like or as. Okay, next example. Tommy is a lion when he plays with his toy mice. So pause the video now and ask yourself, is this personification, is it a metaphor, or is it a simile? So the correct answer is metaphor. Tommy is a lion when he plays with his toy mice. That's drawing a comparison, and we're not using like or as, and this is a metaphor. Now, on the other hand, if we had said Tommy is like a lion, or something like that, then this would be a simile, but we don't see like or as, so this is a metaphor. And he might not look much like a lion, but I can assure you that when Tommy plays with his toy mice, in his head he thinks he is a lion. Okay, next example. Tommy was as cozy as a warm blanket. So is this a metaphor, is this a simile, or an example of personification? Pause the video, think it through, and then we'll go over it. So this is an example of a simile. Tommy was as cozy as a warm blanket. So we're drawing a comparison, and we see the word as, so we know that this is a simile. How'd you do? Your next step is to go test yourself with my GED RLA multiple choice practice.
All right, so important part here.
Using the word like.
Simile compares two things. Let me come back a little bit more. 1230. So a simile compares two things with the word like or as. A metaphor compares two things, but we don't use the word like or as. So that's the difference between a simile and a metaphor. You're still comparing two things, but simile uses the word like or as in the comparison. And like you said, an easy way to remember that is the L in simile and the L in like. And then personification is when you give human characteristics, human qualities to something that's not a human. So an inanimate object, you're giving human qualities. You're saying that that object does something a human would do. Okay. So I have something for you to work on. This should not take you very long, maybe 15 minutes or so. Let me show you what it looks like. I wouldn't worry about the example. I would come down here to the passage, and remember, before you read the passage, you should always look at the questions first. So I would glance through the questions, read the passage, and then answer these 4 questions. And so I've got that it's a little after 12. You should be able to finish this by about 12:15. Okay, that's almost all of you. No. No, this is not clickable. You just need to jot down your answers, jot down your answers, and then we're going to check them here in a second. Yeah, I think if you open it in Adobe, I think you can write on it. Oh, I didn't know that. Yes, that's fine too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and okay, that's pretty cool too. Is there anybody that's still working on these questions that does not have you do not have your answers yet? All right, well, I got that it's 12:14. That's close enough. So let me give you the answers. There are the answers. There's the explanation. Anybody have any questions about any of these? Number 1 was a little tricky, I thought. Yeah, I bet a bunch of you chose D or were thinking about D. Switched between C and D. All right. So today, okay. First of all, still have some of you that are going to the wrong place. Some of you are going down here into TT400 or even down here in my face-to-face class and submitting stuff in there. We are the TTF830 class. That's the class you need to be going into. And so when you click on, when you come to the announcements first, that always pops up first. You're the TTF830 class. Scroll down. I've started kind of putting some of the previous folders into one folder. That way this doesn't get so long. And so each day I'll probably take the one before it and stick it in there. So, but they're all still there. If I double click on this, then see all of that still here. It's in order by date. So you can still get to any of the stuff that we've done before. Today's assignment, this will unlock at 1 o'clock for you. When you click it, everything that we have done is listed in here. All of the videos are here. All of the worksheets, the answers to the worksheets. We did not even do any of this guided practice. We did the classwork today. So if you want some extra help, here are some additional worksheets that you can use to do some extra work and check your answers if you feel like you need to do that. There's our language arts videos. We did one of these sheets. We did not do the other for reading. And here are your assignments. You have one math and one reading assignment. I also want to show you something else. I'm going to go back out, announcement page. You click on our TTF830 class page, and I have added a link underneath your course grades where you can see if you've turned stuff in and if I've checked it. There's a link here that says you can check your attendance hours and what you're doing on Essential Ed or Aztec. If I click on that link, It's going to take me here, and I click again, and it takes me to a spreadsheet. Oh, okay. I'm going to have to show you the spreadsheet. So let me do this. Close out of that. I have a spreadsheet on Google Docs that link will let you see the spreadsheet. There's no personal information on here, but it does show your hours of attendance. Each shaded area is a week. So this is a week. These three. Here's a week. Here's a week. Here's a week. Here is a week. This one column was the week that I was out and that you were supposed to do essential ed on your own, that I said multiple times. And look how many zeros there are. The dashes mean 0. No time done for that week. If you see highlighted yellow, that means you did not get your 6 hours for that week. If you see an error, then you need to let me know, and I will go back and check. So you probably want to look at this carefully and then go in and see if you think I've got something wrong. Okay, because if I do, then I need to. The pink numbers, these purplish pink numbers, are the hours that you did in Essential Ed or Aztec. If you went into Essential Ed, I will tell you this. If you go into Essential Ed or Aztec and you do not do anything, you just let it sit there for 6 hours or 8 hours or 2 hours or however long. If you do that, I don't know if you do that, but if you do that, the app, the program says, oh, they're not doing anything, because they are also looking at where are you moving your mouse and are you moving your mouse? So if you just pull up Essential Ed or Aztec and walk away, there's no hours are being accumulated. You have to actually do the lessons and do the work for it to accumulate any time. Okay, I'll go back and look. Send me an email. Send me an email. If you see an error, then send me an email and I will go back and take a look. If you see the black area, that means that you were not enrolled yet. And so you're not responsible for anything back in the black area, okay? But if you see an error, you need to let me know in an email. And I will go in and check and see if I can find the error. All right, so I'm going to close out of this. I want to go back into this for a second because, and I hate to keep harping on this, especially since the majority of you do what you're supposed to do. But the reason I do is because this is being recorded. And so if somebody were to say, you never told us that, you never said that, I've got recording of it. So I'm saying it so that it's being recorded so that somebody can't come back and say, well, you never told us that, or you never showed us that. Everything I'm saying and everything on the screen is being recorded. On the homework that you were supposed to turn in today, I explained this last week on Thursday. there was a quiz you were supposed to do. And I told you that if you did not do it by today, this morning at 8:30, it would lock you out and you can't go back and do it. 8 people did it. 8. That's it. Only 8 people went in and took the quiz. It was part of your assignment. So that on my tally sheet shows up as you not doing that assignment. So if you did not do it, then that shows that it is a missing assignment because it was part of the assignment to do and it was a separate thing. So it counts it as a separate assignment. And so if you didn't do it, then you have a missing assignment in that column that you can't make up. It locks and you cannot go back in and do it. So again, I'm saying this because I want the recording to catch it. If you are not doing your assignments, if you are not getting your 6 hours per week, it's not that I don't care. Personally, I don't really care. All you're doing is hurting yourself. I mean, if you don't do the work and you don't come to class, you're not going to do well on the GED. It's just not going to happen. But I have to show and be able to justify you staying in the class when we've got people lined up that want to get into a class, and they can't because there's no room. And so I have to start getting rid of people. I got rid of three of you, 3 people from the class that got smurfed yesterday, that were not doing their stuff. And according to my list, I've got a couple right now couple more that probably are not going to be coming back because you're not doing your work. The question about checking to see if you've turned in your work, you can check out on the class page where it says your course grades. That will take you to a page that shows whether you have turned in work or not, and whether I have looked at it. Now, the stuff that you turned in today, I have not looked at. I have not checked it yet. I will be doing that after class. So, are there any questions? Again, if you think something is in error, then send me an email and I will take a look. Your homework is 100 points, and I graded according to how much of it you did. You did all of it, you get 100. But you're not getting a grade in the class. There is no class grade that's going to be recorded. It's just when you're ready to take the test, we bump you up. But it's up to me as to whether or not I start bumping you up or not. It's going in the record that you've done the homework. And in this section here, and right here where it says your course grades, that's a list of the assignments, and I just use it as a way to check to check whether you've done the assignments or not. So it's not that you're getting a physical grade that's going to count towards a grade for the class. It's my way of checking to see if you've done your assignments. My face-to-face people, they just bring it to class and turn it in class, and I check it. I have no way of doing that with you. And so you're turning it in digitally, and I'm recording it that you did it. You're not getting any kind of actual physical grade on your homework. It's just a way of me knowing whether you did it, and for you to know whether you did it. You can go in there and it'll tell you that you've done 16 out of 18 assignments, or you've done 2 out of 18 assignments. So it's a way for you to be able to check too, to see, have I been doing my work? And the assignments stay open. The assignments do not lock. So you can go back 6 weeks ago and turn something in that you didn't do. So those are open. Okay, no ticket out the door today. That's all we got. We will be starting something new on Thursday. Please have your homework turned in. Have a great day and be safe. Please be safe. Again, if you see that there's an error, you need to let me know in an email so I can go in and check it and fix it. Please be safe. Have a good day. Please be safe. I'll see you on Thursday. Okay. Be safe.